everyone. Welcome to my quarterly roundup. So it is, well, the beginning of October now. So this is going to be for July, August, and September. And it is now cooler weather, so I'm wearing my sweater. This is one of my favorite sweaters. It's so cozy. It was actually made by my sister. She knitted it. But the thing that I find so funny about this sweater is that it's got so many buttons, which I find really funny until I accidentally get to the bottom and realize that I've missed the top button, which happened just as I was putting this on. So anyways, it is time for the quarterly roundup, and I will tell you how things have been going. So let's start with a few stats. I'm going to try something new and put some of the stats up on the screen as I talk about them. So for July, August, and September, I read 27 books, which was good for me. My slowest month was September when I only read 6. And it wasn't necessarily that I didn't, well, yeah, I did struggle a bit with the reading. I was going to say I didn't read as much, but my number of page count was lower too, because I was having a bit of a struggle with reading in September, whereas the other 2 months I did quite a bit. So, but that worked out to 8,552 pages total. I only DNF'd one book over this period. My percentage of rereads is only 15% for the year, which is good for me because, like I said before, I'm a chronic rereader rather than trying new things, and I've been trying a lot of new things this year. Nonfiction versus fiction. I read 6 nonfiction and 21 fiction in this quarter, so that was kind of fun. I do tend to always read more fiction than nonfiction, but 6 nonfiction is pretty good. I ended up with 9 5 stars, 7 4.5 stars, 4 4 stars, 6 that were between 3 and 3.5, and only 1 that was less than 3 stars. So that's pretty good. I know I end up with a lot of 4, 4.5, and 5 star books, but largely that's because I've been reading a lot of things that I think I'm going to like. And as opposed to just things for, vlogs and everything, I kind of been working my vlogs around things that I think I'm going to like. So I am a fairly good judge of what I'm going to enjoy. So that's why I've got that. The percentage of books that came off of my shelves versus from the library is 37%. So that's pretty good because I'm trying to go through my shelves and sort out what books I actually want to keep, because a lot of the books on my shelf are older, from the 90s and early 2000s and that sort of thing. So I've been trying to go through and make room for new books when I can afford to buy them. So, but I've read 37% from this 3-month period was off of my shelves, and then the rest were library books. I do make a lot of use of my public library. The breakdown of the books, I read 22 physical books, which is my preferred way of reading. And then I did 1 audiobook, 1 ebook, and 3 that were a mix of audio and physical. So that was about pretty average for me. The mix of 3 audio and physical is maybe a little bit, I don't usually do that mix. I usually either listen to one or the other. I didn't listen to a lot of audiobooks over this period because I was busy with doing things outdoors with the animals and everything, and so I can't listen to something else while I do that. I just have music going in my pocket because I have to concentrate on what the animals are doing. So new authors versus previously read authors. I read 19 books by new authors to me and 8 by previously read authors. So I am working on discovering a lot of new authors, which is exciting too. I read 2 translated books over this period. One was Korean and one was Japanese. And I've noticed that I've been really enjoying a lot of translations from Asian languages. So that's kind of cool. Especially I've been really enjoying a lot of the Japanese translations. So, but I want to definitely keep that up. I think I've read 7 now for the year. So I'm a little behind my goal of reading 12 translated books this year, but we'll see if I can catch that up. And then a new thing that I'm going to start telling you guys about, because I am starting to actually get a list going now, is how many new series I started versus how many series I continued and any that I DNF'd. So I did start 7 new series. Now, my series tracker is only covering things that I have started reading in the last couple of years, because I do have some series of books that I started a long time ago, and I'm just not, if I'm going to read them now, I would need to reread the whole thing. So I'm going to just enter them into my series tracker as I start reading them. Flies are coming into the house now because of it being colder outside. So if you see me waving around, it's just because there's flies. So I'm putting the books in as I start a new series. So I have 7 new series that I started over this 3-month period. I have 3 books that I read that were continuations of series. And I have 1 series where I read the first book and decided to DNF the series. So I only count them as DNFs if I actually read the first book and then decide to DNF it, or read, a couple books and decide to DNF it. If I DNF the very first book, then I don't count it. So that is my stats for the quarter. So now I'm going to tell you about my honorable mentions and then my top 5 for the quarter. Now, interestingly enough, I actually only own 2 of the books that I'm going to talk to you about. So I only have 2 to actually show you physically. And then the other ones were library books. They are on my list of books that I want to buy now after having read them. But I will start with the honorable mentions. So the first one that I want to mention is a nonfiction book, and that one was a 5-star for me. It was called What I Mean When I Say I'm Autistic, and that is by Annie Kotowitz. And this book is sort of a memoir, but also sort of just a discussion of what it means to be an autistic person in the world today. And Annie talks about all the different struggles that she faces as an autistic person, and the sensitivities that she has and how she deals with them in a world that is designed for neurotypical people instead of neurodivergent people. And I just found this book so interesting and so helpful. It was actually one of my higher rated books of the year on CAWPILE, because I just found it so useful and helpful to me, because I am a neurodivergent person and I'm starting to accept that. It's something that I haven't really looked into and understood before, but because of some other things going on in my life right now, I have this desire now to understand why I think the way I do and how I function, and how I can maybe function better in the world that is not designed for people like me. So that's why I picked that book up, and I really, really enjoyed it. I think I must have tabbed 1 million pages in it, and then I had to take pictures of the tabs because it's a library book. Actually, no, that one wasn't the one I took the picture of, because that one was an ebook. So I screenshotted pages and highlighted them on my phone. But I definitely want to buy that one. Very, very good book, and I think it would be a good read for people who are searching for answers about themselves and their neurodiversity, as well as for people who are needing to support someone who's neurodivergent, because she gives a lot of advice and talks about how things make her feel and how she perceives things, and how a lot of autistic people perceive things. And so for somebody who's supporting someone who is neurodivergent, you would probably get a lot out of that book as well. Then the next one I wanted to mention is my honorable mentions is The Lonesome Gods. This is by Louis L'Amour. This is an old book. It was published in 1983. And I've had this book for a long time, and it was my favorite Louis L'Amour book when I was a teenager. I read a ton of Louis L'Amour's when I was a teenager. And I'm actually doing a reading vlog right now where I'm reading through the whole, I think I have about 40 books of his still that I found when I was going through my books in the basement. And so I'm doing a read through of them where I do, I think, 5 books at a time. And I'll put a link up in the corner and at the end of the video for that vlog. But I read this one over this last period, and I really like this one. This is his one book that was more of a historical fiction epic versus a Western. And his writing is so beautiful in it. And he really delves deep into the characters, and it's really a really well written book. And I really wish he had written more books like this, because this is definitely my favorite. So this one follows a young boy at the beginning. He's only 6 years old. His name is Johannes Verne, and he and his father are heading to California. They end up on a solo wagon going through the desert, and it's a very dangerous trip. The reason that Johannes and his father are going is because Johannes's mother has passed away and his father has tuberculosis. So he knows that he's dying. But they had originally been from California. Johannes's grandfather, his mother's father, is a Spanish Don there. And when Johannes's father married his mother, they ran off together because his father was a sailor and not the right status for being allowed to marry the Don's daughter. And they were pursued across the desert, and they managed to survive and get away. And then they had a child, and they lived happily until she passed away from tuberculosis, and now he has it. So he needs to find somewhere for his son to go, because he's only 6 years old. So he is throwing all his caution to the wind and going back to California to try and take him to his grandfather, in the hopes that his grandfather will accept him. But you find out fairly early on that his grandfather, the Don, is still, he's a very, very proud man, and is very set against Johannes's father and wants to kill him. And he ends up tracking them down. This happens like really early on in the book, so it's not a spoiler, but he kills Johannes's father and then leaves him out in the desert to die. But Johannes has a special bond with the desert that you find throughout the book, and he ends up getting rescued and raised by the natives. And then through the story, he ends up going to Los Angeles, which is where his grandfather lives. It's basically Johannes's coming of age, and then he becomes a man, and he, has to deal with all the things that are going on to do with his grandfather and that feud and everything. But it's very, very well written. I really, really enjoyed this book, and I gave it 5 stars. So that's an honorable mention. My other honorable mention that I wanted to say was I read Red, White, and Royal Blue by Casey McQuiston. And it's just kind of funny including this one on my honorable mentions, because it's a romance. And as everybody knows, I struggle with reading romance. But I'm actually in the middle of a romance reading vlog that I'm doing. I'm just waiting for one more book to come in at the library that is taking a long time. But I did actually really enjoy that one. I gave it 5 stars. I thought the characters were really good, and their relationship, the way it developed, it was a slow burn. Very good book. It essentially follows the son of the President of the United States and the younger Prince of England in this world. And it's just, I really, really enjoyed it. So now on to my top 5. So in no particular order, these are my top 5. So the first one is one that I actually have here. I read Force of Nature by Jane Harper, and I read this one for Summerween as one of my mystery thrillers. And it is the second book in the Erin Falk series by Jane Harper. And Erin is a federal agent who lives in Melbourne, Australia. In this one, he and his partner end up going out to the mountains because there's a group that has gone on a corporate retreat, and there were 5 men on the one group and 5 women in the other group, and one of the women has gone missing. And it just so happens that the woman who has gone missing is the one who was whistleblowing on this company to Erin and his partner. So they go out to assist in the search for her. And again, like in the first book, you're getting a dual timeline, which I really enjoy. And so you're getting what's happening present day with Erin, and then you're also getting scenes from what happened with this corporate retreat. So you're slowly going through and learning things in both timelines as they happen. And just very, very well written. Again, I really love Jane Harper's writing. She's quickly becoming one of my favorite authors. I have the third one in the series to read yet, and I also bought her one, The Lost Man, recently, and I'm looking forward to reading that one as well, because she is just such a good writer. I love her characters. Her character of Aaron especially is just, he's my new fictional crush. I really like him, and she just writes very deep characters and characters who have baggage that they're dealing with, but it doesn't like take over the whole story. There's also the really good mystery involved, and I just really, really enjoy her writing. Her descriptions are so good. So that one was one of my top 5. Then the other ones, I guess I don't have actual ones. So I read A Curious Beginning by Deanna Raybourn. That one is the first book in the Veronica Speedwell series, and I really enjoyed it. It was so much fun. It reminded me so much of the Amelia Peabody books by Elizabeth Peters, which I'm actually in the process of doing a reread through that whole 20-book series. And just in the way it reminded me of that was in the fun attitude of the characters, and how there's so much banter between them, and it's about a strong, independent woman in Victorian times, which is the same as the other series. And I just really enjoy that kind of trope. So the first Veronica Speedwell book is about this girl named Veronica, and she has been living with 2 of her aunts. You find out fairly quickly that they're not actually related, but she's been living with them. And the last one of her aunts passes away at the beginning of the story. So she is free to do whatever she wants to do now. And she decides that she's going to go and travel because she is a butterfly catcher, a lepidopterist. And she decides that she's going to go and travel the world and look for some rare butterflies. And that's how she makes her money. She sells rare butterflies to collectors. So she ends up going back to the little cottage where they live to get the last of her things. And when she comes into the cottage, there is an intruder there, and he's looking for something, and then she is trying to get him to leave, and he goes like he's going to kidnap her. So she tries to fight him off, and she ends up getting rescued by this older gentleman who is a baron, I believe. And he tells her that her life is in danger and she needs to come with him. And because she has this sense of adventure and, needs a ride to London because that's where she's headed and save her the train ticket, she decides to go with him. So she goes with him, and he keeps telling her about how her life is in danger, how he knows her actual birth mother, but he can't tell her anything until they've sorted out, what was going on. And he doesn't feel that he's the one who's supposed to tell her what, about her past and everything. But when they get to London, he takes her to a friend of his whose name is Stoker, and he's a taxidermist, and he is such a good character. I just enjoy Stoker so much. And the banter between Veronica and Stoker is so much fun. And this sets them off on an adventure because shortly after, the Baron is killed, and they get set off on this adventure trying to run away from the people who are trying to get her, and she is still denying that it has anything to do with her because she has no idea what's going on. And so Stoker is reluctantly dragged into this, and the whole thing is it just tumbles forward and forward and forward, and it's so much fun. And it's the first book in a series, so I'm really looking forward to reading some more in that series. So that one was definitely a 5-star. Then I read and enjoyed Hood by Stephen Lawhead. So this is a historical fiction, and it's the first in a trilogy. So I'm looking forward to reading the rest of the trilogy. I haven't read them yet, but it is a retelling of the Robin Hood tale, except with a twist. So the twist is that it takes place in Wales at the time of William the Conqueror's son, William Red. And the main character, who is Robin, is actually a Welsh prince named Bran. His small Welsh kingdom is in danger of being taken over by the Normans, and his father takes his warband and heads for London to sign a treaty with William. But while he's on the way, they get ambushed and all of them are killed except for his champion, who is a friend of Bran's. And through what happens, Bran happens to not be there at the time, and he ends up becoming an outlaw and ends up joining forces with this friend of his and a few other people. And they form this band who's essentially trying to steal from the Normans in order to buy back their kingdom. But of course, things don't go according to plan. And it was very, very well written. I really enjoyed it. The characters were well written. The history was well researched for the time period. I liked the way he wove the Robin Hood legend into a story that made it feel more real, in that the characters felt like they could really be the characters from Robin Hood, just with different names. And I really, really enjoyed the way he wove everything together. I really like how he wove the different characters together and how he created the band of men that are around Bran and all of the intrigue and everything with that book. So I'm really, really looking forward to reading the rest of that series. Very, very good. Next one is Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies by Heather Fawcett. So I read that one. I read most of it via audiobook, and then I got to 82% and I had to return the audiobook on Libby. So I ended up ordering the physical copy from the library and finishing it physically. And I really enjoyed that one. It's cozy in a way, and it's kind of, I think somebody called it light academia, because it's very much academic, but it's not like the dark academia sort of thing. But it's about a woman named Emily Wilde, and she studies at Cambridge. She's a professor at Cambridge, and she is a dryadologist. So she studies the Fae. And in this world, the Fae are real, and it's dryadology is a very acceptable profession. But she is very socially awkward, and that makes it quite humorous. She ends up going to a far northern community in the winter, and she's trying to find information on these fae that she needs for her last entry in her Encyclopedia of Fairies that she's writing. So she goes there and starts doing this research, but she has like no rapport with the townspeople or anything because she's so awkward socially. And all she thinks about is her research. Meanwhile, she has a coworker named Wendell Bumblebee, and he is kind of the exact opposite of her. Everybody just loves him, and he kind of squeaks his way through everything. And he gets on her nerves all the time, but he's also pretty much kind of her only friend too. So it makes it extra funny. And he decides that he's going to come to this northern country and help her, much to her annoyance. And the story goes on from there with their banter and everything. That's again, it's kind of like the same as with the Deanna Raybourn one, the Veronica Speedwell one. I love the banter between the two characters and how much the way they interact with each other and how they're, constantly at each other, but then you see it developing into something else. And I really, really enjoyed that. And it was definitely a very cozy book, and I really enjoyed it. And the audiobook was really well done. I liked the woman's voice who was narrating it. So that one was definitely a 5-star. And then the last 5-star I wanted to tell you about for this period was The Red Palace by June Hur. Now, it's not often that a young adult novel actually makes it to my top list, but I really enjoyed this one. It is set in the Joseon dynasty in Korea. It is about a young girl who is a palace nurse in the palace of the king. It's set in the 1700s, I believe. And she ends up, she trained to be a nurse at this, I can't remember what it's called, like the Hyaminsu. I can't remember exactly what it's called, but it's something like that. It's a place where they train nurses. She trained there, and then she got on as a palace nurse, which is like this best position that she could hope for, because she is the daughter of a concubine. Her father is essentially like a judge sort of person. He's involved in legal matters, and her mother was a concubine of his, and so then she was born as a bastard child. And in that culture, that meant that she was essentially the lowest of the lowest class. But she trains to be a nurse and ends up getting on as a palace nurse. Unfortunately, she ends up getting kind of sucked into the palace intrigue, because she and this other nurse are called upon, and this doctor are called upon to perpetuate this ruse, essentially, that the crown prince is sick in bed in his rooms when he's actually has left the palace and is out in the city. And they're sworn to secrecy because, they could lose their lives. But it just so happens that when she leaves the palace, then the next morning, she discovers that there has been a mass murder at the place where she used to live, where she learned how to be a nurse, at the Heiminsu. And she goes there and starts kind of looking into it, because her mentor is being accused of committing the murders. And she ends up crossing paths with a young police inspector. He's very young. They're both, I think, 18. But he is a prodigy. So he has gotten this police inspector position, and he is trying to solve what's going on. But more and more, the clues are pointing towards the crown prince being responsible. And so the two of them are trying to solve what's happened without stepping on the wrong feet and causing themselves to be in danger. And of course, things happen, and it's a very, very good book. It was very interesting. I loved the culture. I loved the time period. She wrote the scenery very well. I could picture it all. And I found that the characters, even though they were young, I didn't feel like they were like it was too unbelievable that they were in those positions, because of the time period and how much more quickly people grew up back then. So I tend to be more accepting of the positions that young adults get themselves into in historical fiction versus in often contemporary fiction, because, being 18 in the 1700s was a lot different than being 18 in the 2020s. But that one was another very, very good book, and I really, really enjoyed it. And I actually definitely want to read more of hers. There's another one that I have now by her that's a little bit of an older one, and she does have a new one that came out that's just in hardcover right now. But I really enjoyed that, and I definitely want to read more. So those would be my top 5 plus 3 honorable mentions for the last quarter, along with my stats. And I'd like to know if you've read any of these books and if you enjoyed any of them. And tell me what you think down in the comments. And I will see you shortly on my next video. I've got a lot of fun stuff coming up in October. By this point, you will have already seen my new TBR game that I created. So that's super fun. And I have a haunted house vlog that I'm working on. I'm making plans for a few other fun vlogs. I have another library one that I'm finishing, and I have that romance vlog that I'm finishing, and just a whole bunch of really fun things going on. So look forward to more videos, and let me know what you thought of these books, and I will see you guys in my next video. Bye.